I have struggled a bit with the game One Deck Galaxy and as well the video that I'm about to make for One Deck Galaxy because I haven't had a clear sense of how to present this game to you. What I've decided to do is discuss with you the turn that I'm in right now, and in so doing, some things about the flow of the game, the pluses and minuses of the game, and ultimately my feelings about the game after maybe 5 or 6 plays of the game. A few things I'll say at the outset. Number one, One Deck Galaxy is definitely not One Deck Dungeon in space. It is by the same designer, by the same company, and it uses a few of the same mechanics. Notably, this will look familiar to you, this card here, which is an event card or an encounter card in One Deck Galaxy, and the dice placement boxes and things may look familiar to you. That's pretty much all that is the same. One Deck Galaxy is a medium weight, I don't want to say heavy, but it's a solidly medium weight game, whereas I would say One Deck Dungeon is a lightweight game, or relatively lightweight, at least in terms of my own metric for play. That's number one. Number two, One Deck Galaxy, if you look it up online, probably the most consistent thing you see about it is that the rule book is bad. Now, there is a 1.1 rule book, which I received along with this box from the publisher. I guess that's better, quote unquote. I had a lot of trouble learning how to play the game. And typically when I am doing videos on games, I do not watch other videos that have been done, either gameplay videos or rules videos, because I want to understand how I can understand the game myself, and that's going to inform how I present the game to you. In this case, I'll say I had no choice. I needed to watch a few videos about the game, and what was interesting to me in watching those is not only what I did see, but what I didn't see. And we'll talk about that as we get into my discussion here. I am going to link in my description the sort of rules overview video that is by the publisher of the game. It's not great, but it's pretty essential, I think. Would be very challenging, I think, to figure out how to play this game based on the rules alone. And there are some gameplay videos out there. But what I don't see out there is a thorough demonstration of actual gameplay for a variety of the adversaries in the game. So this is basically a single player game. You can play it with 2 players against the adversary. And we're looking here at the Dark Star Syndicate, which is the adversary I'm playing against. They all have different rules. I cannot find any playthroughs online showing all the various adversaries. What you see is the kind of easiest one. I really would love to see somebody actually playing it, because I think the challenge level of the game is, to my play, very, very difficult. I play with some house rules at the outset that make things a little bit more possible to do, but even so, I just wonder about the balance of the game, and I would love to see. The game's been out for a while, and the fact that there's no gameplay videos showing the whole range of adversaries, I find that interesting at the least. So, why am I talking about the game? Well, in this small box, there is a really solid, complicated, thematic, if you can allow yourself to extrapolate from the dice to what they actually mean, game about space exploration. The goals that you have in the game, the characters, the aliens that you play, they're all very different, and they are all given different types of challenges and interests themselves. So right now, I am playing the Plumplin Botanists, and Well, later we'll look at all the little art in the game. It's very cute, but again, that does not match. This is not a game for to play with your 6-year-old. It is it's very heavy for gameplay. So my society is the botanist, and as the botanist, I have certain milestones. All societies have different milestones, and the botanists like to collect things. So for me to level up, I need to be essentially collecting different types of dice and doing that by colonizing planets. And you can see I've gotten pretty far here, and this has allowed me to level up. And the reason I want to level up is because in order to combat the adversary in the game, you need to be at certain levels. So, for example, this is you combat the dark star by what's called rhetorical banishment. And you can only do certain levels of that if you yourself are at a certain level. So, right now, what I'm trying to do, and if I do it, I will win, I have to get to level 4 so that I can then fulfill this requirement, and I will win the game once I do that. I'm going to tell you right now, while it seems like, wow, you're so close, I'm pretty certain I'm going to end up losing this game. That said, one of the successes of the game is the different societies. Because if you play, for example, the mathematicians, which I did in the prior game with a different alien race, I had totally different goals to level up, and they were very thematic to math. They had to do with getting my star base to a certain number of ships and science, for example, and other things that were very thematic to what a mathematical society would want to do. Additionally, the individual aliens themselves, they come with a built-in mechanic, and in this case, my built-in technology is that I can kind of manipulate my influence in the world, and like One Deck Dungeon, the world or what you're exploring is represented by a tableau of 4 cards. And in this particular case, we are showing that we have 3 different planets out here. These are represented by the kind of blue card here. And we have one encounter or event that is going to be happening. One of the things that I can do as I spread my influence around the planets, not this event, but the planets, is I can move this is the influence. I can move this around and manipulate where I am exerting my influence to get myself various benefits. And I was able to use this mechanic to get myself to level up the way that I did by focusing on planets that gave me these particular dice benefits. So the dice that you have in the game, the different colored dice, represent various things. So the blue dice, for example, are diplomacy, and the pink and yellow dice are other things that I can't remember, but I'll put up. The stars here are allowing you to manipulate your technology. If it sounds complicated, it kind of is complicated. And the reason that I struggle in part with the game is because there's just so much going on. You have so many different choices each turn, and one choice, because you have finite amount of dice that kind of enable or unlock the options that you have, is going to obviously preclude you're doing something else. In addition to all of this, you have a starbase, and the starbase here, I am just still at level 1. I haven't been able to focus on improving my starbase at all. The starbase is basically a way of using dice that don't have a lot of value elsewhere. So you can stick them in the research lab and kind of convert them to science later on, and then science in turn allows you to do other things. Like, for example, you need 4 science to fulfill this part of this condition to defeat this encounter. You can also use dice to get starships, and starships will allow you ultimately to change the value of a die by ±1. So there's not a ton of dead dice in the game, which is great. On the other hand, you can still have bad luck and roll up a turn where basically all you can do is try to convert your dice to starships or science. That can be useful. It can also be a little bit frustrating. But I will say for a die rolling game, the way the game is built, the game engine does mitigate luck quite a bit and gives you, I think the game does reward multiple plays to sort of get you more familiar with how you play and what the various options are. Of course, there's also the luck about how the galaxy appears. In the galaxy, as I mentioned, there's two types of things. There's the planets that you can work on over various turns to exert your influence. And when you get to the required number of influence, like in this case, it would be 9, you then get to colonize the planet. And when you colonize the planet, you can either take it for the die resources or you can take it for its technology. Then there are these encounters, and the encounters need to be completed all at once. If you are unable to complete the encounter in a turn, the adversary will start to gain influence over it. And once it gains influence over it, in this case 3, it will trigger something called escalate. And each of the adversary has a different impact for what the escalation is. I'm sorry about the focus here. I'm not sure what's going on. The point being that the game itself, because of the different adversaries and because of the different combinations of your aliens and your societies, as you're playing the game itself, your goals will vary. You're going to be working on long-term goals as well as short-term goals. You're going to be trying to increase your own level because ultimately, in order to confront the adversary, you have to be increasing your own level. At the same time, you can't neglect something like a starbase. Well, I did kind of neglect the starbase in this game, and it seems to be okay, but the starbase, if you increase the level of the starbase, you're going to be able to get more resources faster, is basically what it boils down to. And because of the long-term and short-term goals, because of the fact that every time you roll dice, there are so many different options of what to try to do. Do you want to spread your influence over time? Do you want to deal with an encounter right away so the adversary doesn't escalate? Do you want to try to spend what amounts to a ton of your resources each time to try to confront the adversary? And ultimately, that's what you need to do, as mentioned, in order to win the game. If you build up too many ships, you're creating the ships by pulling in cards and using these values on the cards. The more you do this, the faster you run through your deck. When you run through your deck, as I'm about to do here, you are going to have an encounter with the enemy. An enemy event will take place. Enemy events are never good. So there's the decision about how quickly you want to build up your own resources, because everything is a finite pool. So if you're creating a lot of ships for yourself, for example, you're diminishing the galaxy stack. This is a very clever mechanic and causes you, again, to be thinking constantly about what you are going to do. Overall, I have come to really enjoy playing the game. I still have wishes for the game, though. And again, my wishes are to see properly how to play against all the different adversaries, because the rulebook, even the 1.1 rulebook, is not particularly clear. So if you are getting the rules, if you're getting this game, 1.1 is the upgraded rulebook. It is online. I don't know whether or not the retail version now has this or not. I suppose you could write to the publisher and ask before you purchased it if you wanted to make sure you got this. It's better. Is it terrific? No, I don't think so. There's still ambiguities. There are still terms referred to that aren't fully, clearly explained. This is the adversary quick guide to the various adversaries that you're going to be facing, and this is the one that we're showing here. But each of them just has this one spread. I think it could have been more detailed. Having a quick guide when you don't have another guide is questionable, and kind of like says something about the way the rules have been created and are supported for this game. But overall, I think in a small box, I mean, it's a great travel game if you're going somewhere where you want to spend a lot of time. It's not a quick, cute game. And I said we would take a look at the aliens. So let me show you. So we've got this Zib-Zab. And I'm not going to get into the details about what he does. It's not really going to make too much sense, but we will look at, here's the Mathematician Society, for example. So leveling up here, it's all based on numbers. So you need to have exactly 5 influence at each of 3 locations. That's a tough one to do. Or at the end of your turn, you have exactly 11 science and 11 fleet. Or you are going to discard dice totaling exactly 44. And I will say, like in One Deck Dungeon, there are 2 sides to each card. So these are the values if you're playing a 2-player game. If you're playing solo, the criteria differs. The other thing that's really great about it is there's 5 potential levels, but I think with all of the adversaries, you only need to get to level 4. So you're given a choice ultimately at the end about how to level up for your final time. These are the elements, and we've got these Felici, and finally these guys here. Haven't played with those guys yet. And looking again, let's see the rest of the societies I did want to show you. So the Explorer Society, as you would expect, you want to be gathering resources is basically how you're leveling up there. Then there are Guardians, the Guardian Society, and here you're sort of exiling means removing from the game. So you're looking for certain colonies and removing them from the game, as you would expect if you're a protector, or these are high-tech colonies that you're trying to get rid of. So that is a totally different way of playing a game. And then the scientists here, you're basically trying to use and collect and activate technology. So again, thematic, very much thematic to what a different society would be. There's a campaign game with sheets that I don't know anything about, but it does exist in the box. So if it isn't big enough for you as I am demonstrating it, it is even bigger than I am showing. And again, I haven't showed you all the adversaries because they just play differently, and just know that they're there. And gameplay variety is not an issue with this game. That the games will play radically differently your strategies will play differently depending on what society you choose, what aliens you choose, and what adversary you choose. My main message is I think it's important. It's not the kind of game you're going to pick up the rule book and just start playing. The little commitment is needed at the outset to understand what's going on. If you're looking for a solidly medium weight game in space where you are having long-term and short-term goals, where you're facing different adversaries and where you're playing different aliens with different capabilities, I think this definitely offers all of that.